Good morning. I'm Tom Schade. I'm a retired UU minister. I served at the First Unitarian Church in Worcester for 12 years a while back. I'm now retired and living in Plymouth, and I have been a friend of your wonderful minister, Carolyn Paterno, since probably around 2000. And she is one of my closest friends in the ministry. So I am delighted to be here and to be with you. This morning, it's, of course, a difficult day. If you've checked the news or your phone this morning, you know about this shooting, this racist terrorist shooting in Buffalo. These happen now long enough or often enough that when they enter into your life as something that you might actually encounter someday. People are frightened, and that's the goal of that. Yesterday, Sue, who is my wife, and I rallied for reproductive justice along with many citizens of our town, Plymouth, Massachusetts, the town we now live in. We rallied at the Rock, which if you have ever been there, you know is less than impressive. It's not like rallying at the Lincoln Memorial, which is this great temple, or at the state capitol on Boston Common. No, we rallied at the Rock. But the Rock does not awe us. It does not inspire us. We know too much about history for the Plymouth Rock to awe and inspire us. We know that just part of that story are settlers coming seeking religious freedom, but we also know that another larger part of that story is a long story which brought death and destruction to the Wampanoag people who lived there. So we have demythologized the Rock. So we rallied at the Rock for reproductive justice, but the cause was greater than the symbol where we rallied. And the people who were gathered there, hundreds of people, I should say most of them, probably 3/4 of them young women, were much more inspiring than the myth of the Rock. People are frightened because the rights of the people are being taken away by an oppressive government, egged on by a movement of our fellow citizens who are inspired by a nostalgic and triumphalist, racist, myth of their own about our nation's history. They are inspired by historic myths, but we are not. We rally at the rock which we have demythologized because we know too much to be moved by it as a myth. So what shall we do? We do again today what we continue to do. We gather and worship. We gather and worship to remind ourselves of what is most important. To practice compassion, to rest in silence and breathe. We gather and worship to sing songs which name our deepest desires, desires which we hardly can name ourselves in our everyday life and our everyday voices. We gather and worship to be inspired by the people we encounter, and we gather and worship to gain strength for the future and tend to our own souls and the souls of others. We gather and worship. And as we do, we acknowledge, as we do always, the Nahantec and Mohegan people as the traditional caretakers of this land on which we worship. And we honor and pay respect to the Nahantec and Mohegan ancestors and their lineage, who today uphold their traditional practices, art, and education. So come join us in worship. Welcome to All Souls. Good morning. We're going to start by singing hymn number 110. What is it? What's the name of that? We Give Thanks. Thank you. God. Just like that, gone. And let's sing it 3 times. And the first time, let's sing it like we're welcoming neighbors to a little get-together in our backyard about the need for a new stop sign. A nice, firm, friendly welcome. And then the second time we sing it, let's sing it like we're meeting our family for Thanksgiving. More enthusiasm. And the last time we sing it, let's sing it like we're greeting cousins we haven't seen for 10 years and that we've missed a lot. So the third time, let's really be in a hysteria of welcoming. Are you ready?
Precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
my cousins to greet me that way. That was beautiful. And as we do each Sunday morning, we will greet each other with greetings of peace and joy and love. And we greet those in the room and those in the online pews. So if everyone would just wave, say good morning and welcome. And now please, you're welcome to move about the room, tap elbows, and greet your neighbors. That was beautiful. So over the elbows. So over the elbows. You would bring it, yeah. But that was a joyful noise. Beautiful. Please join me in speaking the chalice lighting as Reverend Schade lights our chalice. We come together every week, bound not by a creed, but by a belief that how we are in the world, who we are together, matters. We light this chalice together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change the world. And sadly, we've changed who we dedicate our peace candle to this morning. As Reverend Schade lights our peace candle, please hold in mind the 10 lives lost in Buffalo, their mourning families and community, and our aching country and world. May we take one more step toward peace and toward the end of racism and violence. Thank you. And now we're going to invite the children in for a very timely story and to bring their own joyful noise. We've got the leaders of the pack. Welcome. And here they come. You guys are very orderly and quiet.
So today's story is about a very wise old turtle, and it's a story with kind of an old message that we need to learn anew. So see what you think by the end of the story, and then we're going to take that back to our classes. So once, in a beautiful, faraway land that was somehow not so very far, there fell a truth. It streaked down from the stars, but as it fell, it broke. One of the pieces blazed off through the night sky, and the other fell to the earth in the beautiful land. In the morning, Crow found the fallen piece. It seemed to be a sort of stone, shiny and pleasing to the eye. He picked it up. "This is a lovely truth," said Crow. "I will keep it." But after he had held it for a while and examined it closely, Crow said, "This truth does not feel quite right. A part of it is missing. I will look for a whole one." He flew off and dropped it to the ground. Other creatures noticed the truth as well, but they too found that it had rough edges and was difficult to carry. There is something missing in this truth, they thought, and they left it alone. Then a human being found it. On it was writing that said, "You are loved." The man held it carefully, thinking it was the loveliest thing he had ever seen. The man took the wonderful truth to his people. The truth made the people feel good. But soon, they also began to feel fear and even anger toward those who were not like themselves and did not share their truth. Many battles were fought. People suffered. Finally, the animals went to Old Turtle, ancient and wise. "This truth the people quarrel over," the animals said. We have all held it ourselves. It is broken and it does not work. Please tell the people."
"I'm sorry," answered Old Turtle, "but the people will not listen. They're not ready yet." And the suffering continued.
Until one day, a little girl came to find Old Turtle. She had traveled very, very far. When she saw Old Turtle, she simply looked with eyes full of wonder.
"Why have you come so far to find me, little one?" asked Old Turtle.
I wanted to ask a question," answered the little girl. "Where I live, the earth is sore, and people are suffering. Battles are fought over and over again. People say it has always been this way and will never change. Can it change, Old Turtle? Can we make it change?"
Old Turtle spoke. "The world you describe is not the world that has always been, little one." Then Old Turtle told of how the people had found the broken truth and the suffering it had caused. "It is because it is so close to a great whole truth that it has such beauty, and that the people love it so," said Old Turtle. "It is the lost portion of that broken truth that the people need if the world is to be made whole again."
"But where is the missing piece?" asked the little girl. "Can we put the truth back together again?"
"First, my child, remember that there are truths all around us and within us. The people clutching their one truth forget that it is part of all the small and lovely truths of life. They no longer see these truths, no longer hear them. But perhaps, little one, you can.
I'll try.
Old Turtle spoke again. Remember this also, little one. The broken truth and life itself will be mended only when one person meets another. Someone from a different place, or with a different face, or different ways, and sees and hears herself. Now, little one, it is time for you to go. Take this with you, said Old Turtle, as she placed something in the little girl's hand. I have saved it for a very, very long time for someone just like you.
The little girl looked at the mysterious, beautiful stone. It was lovely to touch, and it made her feel good to hold it. Thank you, Old Turtle, she said, and then she started home. She sometimes touched the stone the Old Turtle had given her to renew her strength. It took a long time, yet almost no time at all, and she was home. She explained about the broken truth and the need to make it whole, but the people did not believe her and could not understand. Finally, Crow, seeing all that had happened, flew to the place high above the village where the great truth was kept. He cawed in his loudest voice, and suddenly the little girl knew what to do. She climbed to the high place herself. She took Old Turtle's stone from her pocket and carefully added the missing piece to the old broken one. The fit was perfect. The people looked, and they began to understand. Time passed, and upon the beautiful land, tiny truths fell by day and night, gentle as the rain and snow. And the people found them and kept them in their hearts. And slowly, as the people met other people different from themselves, they began to see themselves. Thus ends the story.
May it be
we're
so.
going to take these truths with us on her way as you all hold them right here and sing us out with Trees of the Field.
You shall go out with joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Trees of the field will clap their hands. Trees of the field will clap their hands as you go out with joy. This morning, Clary Vento will be passing out the matches as we light our candles of joy and concerns in our lives. Claire, along with Emmy Franklin and Bonnie Sullivan, organized on our behalf and on the community's behalf the rally for reproductive rights in New London yesterday. It was a righteous, joyful, fierce, courageous gathering, and we really are so grateful for our community leaders. So as we turn our attention to our needs and concerns and our joys and light candles, we invite those in the pews at home to light your own candles, to write comments on the YouTube comment box, whatever it's called, so that we can share those if you would like in the service. You're invited now to rise if you'd like to light a candle. So this morning, there were no cares or concerns noted in the book that we keep at the entrance every Sunday. But from the online pews, we have gratitude expressed for the rally yesterday, and those who couldn't be there in person were with us in their hearts. Tracy Doobie asks us to think of her partner Jeff, who's having a hip replacement tomorrow. It's been a long time coming for him, and she asks us to hold him in our thoughts. Eleanor McClelland is ever so grateful to have 3 days with her two sisters. One is ill, but they were able to come together. And I've apologized to FM 799. I don't know who that is. However, Frank. Hi, Frank. Sorry, excuse me. But Frank is expressing, my computer's now is glitching, my friends. Frank expressed gratitude for us being there for him in the hardest time of his life. So, just take one more moment in case. Oh, and it's, wait. Oh, Frank is having a conversation with Carolyn. So I hope I have gotten everybody's, one more? Oh, we're good, okay. Thank you, Jesse. That's a little tricky, navigating that, but lovely also, isn't it? So join me in reflection and prayer. Spirit of life in all the ways you are known and experienced, may our roots be deep and strong to hold our own grief and the grief of others. May we dance like the wind in joy. And may we have the power and tenacity of the ocean to continue our work for justice. May it be so. It was beautiful, Bill. Thank you. Yeah. This morning's reading is Transition by Valerie Carr. Ms. Carr is a lawyer, founder of Revolutionary Love, Sikh activist. In this reading, she is talking about the process of childbirth. There is, you see, the stage called transition. It feels like dying, but it is the stage that precedes the birth of new life. And so, birthing as a metaphor has begun to fill my imagination. You know how we say warrior on or soldier on? Only a subset of men for most of human history have experienced going to war. Yet we all know what it means to be brave enough to fight the good fight, right? So too, only a subset of women have the experience of birthing or birthing that way. It is not special. It is very specific. It is distinct. It requires a certain kind of courage to create something new. And so the metaphor of birthing, I began to wonder if it may have something to offer all of us. And it has filled my mind and formed a question in me, a question that I have been asking every single day of the last 2 years. What if? What if the darkness in our country right now, in the world right now, is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our America is not dead, but a country still waiting to be born? What if all of our ancestors who pushed through the fire before us, who survived genocide and colonization, slavery and sexual assault, what if they are standing behind us now, whispering in our ear, "You are brave. You are brave." What if this is our time of great transition? I believe that we are convening at a time when our nation and our world are in transition. For as we speak, we are seeing the rise of far right-wing supremacist movements in this nation and all around the world, propping up demagogues, mainstreaming nativism, undermining democracies, and politicizing the very notion of truth. We are at a crossroads. Will we birth a nation that has never been? A nation that is multiracial, multi-faith, multi-gendered, multicultural, a nation where power is shared and we strive to protect the dignity of every person? Or will we continue to descend into a kind of civil war? A power struggle with those who want to return America to a past where a certain class of white people hold cultural, economic, and political dominion. Is this the darkness of the tomb or the darkness of the womb? And so ends the reading.
Thank you, Karen. The thing about a deeply oppressive society, one like ours, that is systematically racist, is that whatever you love the most, whatever gives you the most pride, whatever gives you the most sense of belonging, will infuriate you and break your heart. In this world, whatever you love the most will break your heart. For most of us, there is a part of our identity that makes us proud and defines us positively. For many people, it's the story of their family. You know, maybe you're an old Yankee family it's been around forever and has many branches. Or maybe your source of pride is the story of your immigrant family that started with the grandfather or the great-grandfather who came and got a job in a factory and started your family on the path of upward mobility. Or maybe your family wasn't as successful, but you take great pride in their hard work and their persistence and even their survival against great odds and barriers. Maybe what gives you your pride is your education, your alma mater, that fine, distinguished old institution, or just the fact that you were the first in your family to go to college at all. Or maybe your pride comes from the fact that your family served in the armed forces of the United States and that there's a grave somewhere that's decorated with a flag on Memorial Day. There are so many ways to locate yourself in this country, in its history, and in its culture, and so many ways and sources of pride for each of us. Let me speak personally. I come from a UU family, not all the way back. My grandfathers were German Baptist ministers and preached in German, both of them. My mother and father met at a Baptist youth organization, but they became UUs. And I was a UU all the time I was growing up, and even my father was a UU minister for a portion of that period of time before he got a job in a steel mill. He always said that nobody ever called him at home from the mill. We had good insurance. But I would say that my religion growing up was the most important part of my identity. It was what I loved. It's what gave me meaning and in which I was most proud. And it was my thread in the fabric of the United States of America. I could trace back all those UUs, and I was part of them. It had meaning. I grew up I grew up a long time ago, but anyway, on the other hand, maybe I didn't. It had meaning. It had political and social values that were attached to that identity. Because I was a UU, I was taught to be tolerant. I was taught at my grammar school days to support the civil rights movement. I was taught to regard women with respect and as my equal. And I was taught that I should be opposed to violence and that I was to be engaged in my community and that I was to be idealistic and hold my ideals with pride and meaning. I could be proud of living up to the demands of my faith. And believe me, when you grow up a Unitarian, you experience it as making demands on you. And I was proud. My faith formed me, our faith formed me, and I remain disciplined by its requirements to this day. My sense of myself as being a good and worthwhile person is tied up with being a Unitarian Universalist. So, it infuriated me when its racism was identified and criticized. When my faith tradition, the one I love so much, was called to account. That's when the racial reckoning that we all talk about got real for me and personal. Now, if we step back, most of us have heard the news that the United States is deeply racist and that it's a systematically oppressive society that holds white people as the norm and that values the circumstances and lives of white people as more important than the lives of others. White lives matter more. Now, we who are white have heard this news, and we've frankly been hearing this news for 60 years now, if we're old enough to be around that long. And many of us think it to be true in general. In general, except that one place where it is my source of pride and pleasure. the place I draw my meaning and value from. And then, as the warning to the minister goes, you've gone from preaching to meddling. Folks, it is a traumatic thing to have your most precious source of value and pride be condemned as part of a racist and oppressive system that did abuse people, that's abusing people right now, and is reluctant to stop the abuse. It's shameful. It's traumatic. When you're a little part of it, even just your pride is confronted. It's heartbreaking. And so at this point, the whole spectrum of human response to trauma comes to play. Denial. Oh, yeah, denial. Anger. Bargaining. Before the truth can be accepted. That personal racial reckoning has come or is coming to every person in our society, but it will be especially painful for those who are white. Because every tradition, every myth, every legend that sustains white people as individuals is part of the oppressive culture of white supremacy, even those parts that are progressive and well-intentioned. White supremacy is a system, and in a system, the sum is greater than, the all is greater than the sum of its parts. And the part that will hurt you the most is the part that you love the most. White supremacy doesn't say often anymore that white people are better. It just says that white people are in charge and should stay that way. And it doesn't say so out loud. It just says that the institutions that white people created should remain in place, and those who are not white should fit into those, including faith traditions like ours. So as I said before, it infuriated me when Unitarian Universalism was asked to reckon with its history and its assumptions. After all, we were the good guys, right? We've always been on their side. We have our stories of bravery and our martyrs, James Reeb, Viola Luuzzo. And frankly, we look around and we say, well, we're so overwhelmingly white. Well, that's just a tragic misunderstanding on other people's part, that they don't recognize how good we are. Tragic misunderstanding. Now, I'm not going to present all the counter evidence to this collective self-delusion. We've been talking about it for 50 years, and for many, it only makes you angry. It did me when I started out 20 years ago taking this seriously. It made me angry. It made me so angry it colored everything I thought about Unitarian Universalism for at least a decade. I was angry and I was upset and I was hurt. Finally, the question that emerged to me was, why was I so angry about this? When I knew it was true. Boy, that ticks you off. Right? Why does this critique hurt me so deeply? I was well versed in critical race theory. I was well versed in critical race theology. Right. But over time, that knot of shame and rage loosened and relaxed. And I give a lot of credit to the actual practice of Unitarian Universalism for that. The weekly spiritual practice that we engage in as Unitarian Universalists, which is called coming to church. It's our spiritual practice. And there are folks here who are as faithful to that practice as, you know, the legendary old monks in the monastery and as legendary old Buddhist priests on the hilltop, faithful to that practice. I know folks in churches who show up for everything. You know, when the intern minister who's finally getting a little bit untongue-tied is preaching, and they show up to, you know. We come together, and I came together, and what it is like every week it's a reminder of what's most important. Well, you can forget what's most important easy enough, can't you? This hour of reflection. That moment in the service where you go, wait a second, am I actually living by what's most important, or am I caught up on other stuff? Oh, you know, and then there's that constant practice. All the time you have to meet other people where they are. I love it when they meet me, So when you see the institutions you love and you step back and you have this moment of reflection and you remind yourself what's important and you ask yourself the deep question and you let, you know, part of it is that you don't get to talk back too much because you actually have to listen to somebody else, and somewhere in that thing a little voice comes in your head and says, maybe you should just let go of that anger. Nobody ever talks you out of anger except yourself. And when you see that racism and oppression work into the systems that you love the most, then you know it's a system and not just other people's bad choices. That's when you know it's a system. When you know that the institution that you love and your pride is all tied up in it. So we wonder right now why so many people in our country seem to have chosen a path of anger and intolerance and even cruelty. It's good to remember that mostly people are reacting out of hurt pride, and that what they love the most and depended on the most is being questioned and criticized. And their pain is real, even though their denial is futile, and their anger is misplaced. But for many of them, that knot of shame and rage will loosen as they get through their personal racial reckoning. As a society, we are experiencing the birth pangs of new creation. What is being born is a transformed, multiracial, multicultural democracy with liberty and justice for all. That's what's being born. That's what's happening. We should never call ourselves the resistance. They are the resistance. They are resisting what's being born. What's being born is what my German Baptist ancestors would have called the kingdom of God. Some modern theologians call it the Republic of Heaven. We call it the beloved community. That's a phrase from the Fellowship of Reconciliation, a pacifist group, and was popularized by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. So what is the vision of a beloved community? Our hymn number 120, Turn Back, dreams of, quote, a world made fair and all her people one. Decades old, maybe even a century old phrase. A world made fair and all her people one. A world where people can come together because the world is free of the systems of privilege and oppression that blight so many lives and divide us. A world of mutual respect and mutual care. Now, if I were to sum up the history of Unitarian Universalism over my lifetime, I would say that we evolved from being a liberal Protestant denomination whose ultimate value was the individual's freedom of conscience to being an interfaith religious movement whose ultimate value is the beloved community. From individual religious freedom to beloved community. We prefigure beloved community. We're not it. The world isn't going to become convinced of beloved community because they look at our coffee hour and say, we all want to live like that all the time. We prefigure it. Actually, what we are, to be even less woo-woo about it, is we are a learning community. A learning community to learn how to live in a community that doesn't depend on oppressive systems. And it's constant learning. It's constant learning. Right now, we are learning that if you're going to be an inclusive community in a pandemic, you wear masks longer than other people do. We're learning that. Because we're learning that you have to include the immunocompromised. We're learning. We learned I remember about 5 years ago, me and my minister friends, who are, can be an immature bunch, were laughing it up over gender-neutral bathrooms at our General Assembly. We never heard of it. We thought it was weird and kooky. 2 years later, of course, every congregation in the country was relabeling their bathrooms, right? Because we learned something. We're a learning community that learned that if you're going to be inclusive, people who are not on the male-female binary about gender expression, you have to do your bathrooms right. Otherwise, you're excluding people. You're hurting people. We learned something. We're a learning community learning how to live in a world that doesn't depend on oppression and privilege. And so we're always in this cycle of this new idea that's coming around, or as we often say it, they've gone crazy in Boston. They've gone crazy in Boston and now they're all upset about this or that. A year later, we're going, Unitarian Universalist congregations and communities are trying to teach that beloved community is possible to a world and to a nation who thinks that the way things are the way things ought to stay the same forever. Hear me out. The birth of a beloved community is not a political process that's out there. Though, goodness gracious, we have to vote, we have to demonstrate, we have to do all those things. That's not going to get us where we need to go. It requires a spiritual awakening in us as individuals and us as groups. We have to learn how to live in a community that leaves oppression behind. Is All Souls that learning community? We need a weekly hour to remind ourselves of what's most important. And we need rituals to practice compassion. Is that what we're doing when we light our candles? Is that a ritual that doesn't just give expression to people who have something on their heart? It's one where we, sitting in the chair, have that compassion muscle exercised. Compassion is just like a muscle, like your bicep. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. We need a space of reflection to loosen the knots of shame and rage and heartbreak that bind us to the past. when what we love is challenged. I talked about how we have demythologized the Plymouth Rock, the Plymouth Pebble. And I've talked about how the myths that drive our opposition are old and antiquated and based on past injustice, but they're fighting for those myths. What is our myth? The birth of beloved community is the overarching story of our time, and it's one in which every one of us will be called over and over and over again to play our part. What frightens us now is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb. Let's sing. Would you rise as you're willing and able and so moved to join us in our last hymn, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? But through the darkness proudly closed, songs in the night did give it. No storm could shake my inmost calm, while to the rock I'm living. This love prevails on heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing? Tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing. From far and near, how can I keep from singing? Through prison cell and dungeon bar, our hearts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? Why don't you join me in the words of our chalice extinguishing? The service has ended, but our work is not yet done. May our spirits be renewed and our purpose resolved as we meet the challenges of the week. The chalice flame is extinguished until we are ignited by the strength of our communion. I want to thank you all for your kind and wonderful reception today. It's a great pleasure to be with you. And I just want to remind you that there is a power at work in the universe that's bringing forth a new creation. It's not made by our human hands alone. It's made by our human hands together and mysterious forces that we can only touch. You can trust that power. You can trust that power with your life, with your future, with your heart, with your energy. That power is there. So go forth, confident in the love that shall prevail, full of courage, full of hope, and full of love for all you meet. Amen.
Please be seated as we enjoy God's close holiness. Fog lifted and the sun is out. Thank you, Bill. As always, we are grateful for your financial support. Your offerings are gratefully accepted in the basket at the exit doors and through PayPal or Venmo online. Your generosity keeps the work of All Souls going. We have some important announcements, so listen up. This is the second call to members to our annual meeting next Sunday following the service. The meeting agenda and annual report have been sent to members by email. If you are unable to attend in person, you may vote by proxy. Proxy forms can be found at the visitors table near Jesse or by Lynn. Also online in the weekly newsletter and on our website. Forms must be received no later than May 19th via email or sent to 19 J Street. Following the annual meeting, there will be a brief discussion of the process of how we will be going forward on the building project. The discussion will serve to let the congregation know about the process, not specific building decisions next week. Friday Night Folk will be on May 20th. Charlie King and Colleen Katow, is that right? Did I say it right? Okay, Colleen Katow will be performing. Call the office to reserve your seats. Perry, Reverend Caitlin, and Chris Cluette will facilitate a meeting on Sunday, June 5th about Braver Angels. So this has been in your newsletters if you haven't clicked that link and read all the way through the newsletter. Braver Angels is a grassroots organization seeking to bridge partisan divide and strengthen democracy. We want to learn together. Please see Perry or Caitlin with questions to sign up. One last thing, we are looking for delegates to serve as delegates to represent All Souls at the General Assembly. You can do that online. Bob Bunting organizes the delegates, and we very much appreciate representation. So again, please go to your newsletter for more details. Thank you, and coffee is served.